Good overnight, and welcome on in to the creepy overnight edition of From Day One. The finals of the remote viewing for Mark Bell and guest start right now.
Spans the world to callers from outside the U.S. and Canada only. Use Skype with a headset like you on a computer and call MITD 55. That's MITD 55. That is from outside the United States. Let me run through it very quickly. I am going to get phone lines open this hour. I've got to. I've barely scratched the surface with Joe McMonagle. But here we go. The public number, area code 952-225-5278. 952-225-5278. If you're calling from Skype and you're in the U.S., North America actually, it's MITD 55. That's MITD 55. Outside North America, we also have for you a Skype entry point, and that is MITD 55. MITD 55. And so I'm just about the point where I can turn it over to some of you. But, oh, God, this is fascinating. And I want to ask the obvious, and that is two-part question. If remote viewing was so effective, then why did the CIA shut it down?
That's a really good question. One of the difficulties is it was unfortunately being run during a period of the Proxmire Golden Fleece Awards, and a lot of people who knew about the remote viewing and whatnot. Let's see. I'm going to back up and start over again here.
Okay, sure.
If you talk about the people at the highest level of government, and I'm talking now about senators and congressmen who many decades in Washington, very power-oriented people who have significant power and aren't afraid of anything.
Right.
People like John Glenn, Senator Cohen, a number of people like that. They were very supportive of what we were doing because they could see the veracity to it. They could see the accuracy and whatnot. The fact that we were dealing with some of the most difficult problems and being successful. They had no problem with it. And down at the extreme lower level, down at the agent and the street level, they had no problem with it because they needed all the help they could get, and they would take anything we gave them and run with it. And they realized that it was vulnerable and that there were times when we would be wrong and that sort of thing, and they allowed for it. It was predominantly the bureaucrats in the middle, the people who worried about their jobs or worried about how they were thought about or whether or not their bosses cared about them, that kind of thing. They were the ones that took great exception to it. And I think they did so because it was way cheaper to use a remote viewer in many cases than to use some other form of collection. And they saw that as a threat to their managerial jobs and their jobs of import.
Okay, one other big question, Joe, and here it is. Okay, they shut it down, they say. If you want to keep something in a little compartment, you might do something like releasing some kind of information that would go on. By the way, I saw that Nightline program, and the whole world would think it was shut down. But if it really was that valuable, Joe, maybe it's not shut down, it's still running deep black.
Well, if that were true, Art, then you would think that they would not want to forego the use of the science. They spent literally tens of millions of dollars on the science in understanding how to use it and how to appropriately apply it, and then they would go away and just ignore all that.
What I'm saying is maybe they haven't.
Well, except that I know where all the science is, and all the science was in a storage unit that was under our control. So No, I think it actually shut down because they had just previously fought a 2-year battle with the Congress over the other black projects that they had done, MK Ultra as an example, where they used LSD for interrogation purposes, and got in a whole raft of trouble over that. And so they weren't about to assume full authority over a psychic unit.
All right. Well, one last question, and that is, if we really did shut down our operation, what about the rest of the world? What do you know about China and Russia and other countries that might be still doing it?
Well, I know Russia's got a tremendous involvement in the psychic world, in the paranormal world, because I've been there and I've been inside their unit. In fact, I'm an honorary member of their unit.
Really?
I met their top viewer in the year 2003, I think it was, and she got an award equivalent to mine from the Russian government for viewing during the Chechenian War. So she's every bit as good as I am. I did some remote viewing with her, and that proved to be exceptionally good. So I've met their people, and I understand the seriousness of their involvement in this whole area. And they're as mystified as we are, and they dealt with pretty much the same problems politically that we dealt with a large number of people within the government being hostile.
How many people in the world, Joe, are at your level? I can ask it that way.
There's probably dozens. I would expect that there would be dozens. I know in America there's literally thousands. They just don't call themselves psychics. They usually are found in more hazardous job areas like police departments, fire departments. They fly planes. They're surgeons. They're people who quite literally don't have the time in their job during an emergency to reference a publication or look something up on the internet.
All right, Joe, I've got to go to the phones. If I don't do that, they'll scalp me. I could do 2 more shows on the stuff we've got to talk about. Joe, you're on the air with Joe.
Hey, can you hear me?
I hear you.
Hello.
Great. Hi there. I was wondering if anybody has remote viewed the upcoming election.
That's a really good question, actually, Joe.
No, I haven't. Actually, the reason I haven't is because I can't task myself, and nobody else is tasked me or come into my operations area and said, task Joe on this. So, no, I haven't done that yet. I do have some feelings about it, though.
I bet you do.
Spontaneous feelings. I suspect that if the Democrats decide to run Hillary, I think they'll lose. But the mediator, sort of the wrench in the ointment there.
All right, separating everything here. Donald Trump. This is your personal view as opposed to your remote view.
Well, it's spontaneous psychic information. I guess you could call it that.
All right. Well, then, if you're going to do that, what about the Donald?
I think he's a spoiler. He's just in there, throwing wrenches left and right to try to get things off of dead center.
It's working.
I think he's trying to stir people up so that they will start addressing some of the more serious issues, instead of the sort of placating drivel that they sell us every year when they run for office.
Well, so far so good on that one.
Yeah, and on both sides, I would add.
Gardnerville, you're on the air with Joe McMonagle. Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Turn your instrument down, if you would, please.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question. If 2 people are remote viewing each other, can they see what each other's doing, and maybe that's part of the reason they stopped the program? Because
that wouldn't be a reason to stop the program. are two instances in reality where they believe a remote viewer might have seen another remote viewer. And in both cases, the remote viewings were done by two individuals separated by a number of years.
Oh. Also, can someone block you from remote viewing?
No. There's no demonstrated method for blocking remote viewing, and that may come closer to the reason for closing the project down than not. If you have no defense against remote viewing, then you're left with the possibility of ridicule, and they pretty much gotten their share of ridicule out of it by just releasing it onto the internet. So.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let's see, somebody named TJ. This is irresistible. Have you remote viewed any other planet with life on it?
Yes, I have.
Oh.
And the fact that there's life on other planets, I think, is a foregone conclusion. Anyone who looks out at the stars and says there's no possibility needs to have their head examined.
That said,
yes, there's definitely life on other planets. Now, the difficulty is whether or not they have the capacity to visit us, and I think that that's quite possible. I think that there probably are what I call star jumpers that jump from star to star, and they do so almost instantaneously, and by virtue of that makes them time travelers, which opens up a whole raft of common beings that they can contact or interact with. I think that we're moving in that direction, and it probably is not going to happen in my lifetime or my son's lifetime, but at some point in the next 50 years to 75 years, I think we're going to figure out how to do that as well.
Okay, well, it's irresistible. Do you know anything about the nature of this life? In other words, we always talk about intelligent life. Are you looking at slugs crawling across some planet, or are you talking about intelligent life?
No, I'm looking at intelligent life because I see structures, and generally speaking, structures aren't built by non-intelligent life. So
that's a fact.
The difficulty is there's not a lot of information, and it's very difficult to collect the information for obvious reasons. The information has to travel a long way, and secondly, it has to be understood.
Intelligent life that makes us look like slugs, or intelligent life not yet up to our level?
No, I think it's up to our level anyway. I don't think it's up to the level of interstellar space travel, but certainly up to our level.
Okay. Very quickly, here's Kurt on Skype. Hello, Kurt. Kurt, going once. Kurt, going twice.
Oh, I had my mute on again.
Oh, well,
sorry.
You gotta stop doing that.
I'm sorry
You
about
came
that.
that close. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh my goodness. President Kennedy wanted to do away with the CIA. He was tired of them. They did wrong to him, and in that pathetic three-letter agency, when you remote view, did you ever remote view to people to do certain bad acts, like murder these people, or did you do the counteract and make people do bad things? CIA, we're going to shut them down one day.
I don't know about that. I'm going to twist his question into a different question, and that is this. I think most of us now know about remote viewing. I have always wondered about something really scary called remote influencing.
Right. That was, in fact, the predominant issue that the Russians pursued. We have a book that I'm a part author on. It came out just a few months ago. It's called ESP Wars, and it's the a book, and the deputy director of the KGB at the time, a General Sham, actually writes in the book that one of their predominant pursuits was to determine whether or not they could affect another human being at a distance.
Right.
In our discussions with him, we came to the conclusion that they were never able to accomplish that, and for a number of reasons. The primary one being you need the cooperation of the targeted individual, and that just doesn't happen for obvious reasons. Now, that was their pursuit, and another thing they tried was the use of radionics or machines to affect the health of individuals at distance.
Oh.
And out of all the machines that were tested, and I'm talking rooms full of them, there was not a single machine that actually did what it was purported to do. And again, that was according to the deputy director of the KGB.
I would assume that there are different levels of remote viewing ability. Can you imagine, Joe, that hitting another level or 2 or 3 levels might bring on the ability to remotely influence or affect?
Well, the difficulty is first you have to identify what you mean by remote influence. If you mean causing harm to another individual,
Stop a couple of heartbeats?
Yeah, I don't think it's possible.
Okay, all right, hold it there. We are so time-starved. Joe McMonagle is my guest, probably the world's best remote viewer. If you have questions, we've got phone lines, we've got Skype connections. Join us.
Midnight Matters are best handled by those that understand how to move in the darkness, like Art Bell. To call the show, please dial 1-952-CALL ART. That's 1-952-225-5278.
That's the phone number. If you want to access us on Skype, it's easy. North America, just call us at MITD51. That's Midnight in the Desert, MITD51. Outside the U.S., North America, MITD55. MITD55 worldwide. Boy, what an opportunity for an interview this night. Joe, welcome back. All right, someone needs to talk to you. Somebody named Trey on Skype. Hello?
Hey, Art, Joe, and Belgab.
Okay, Joe.
Hello.
2 quick questions. One, is this an appropriate NDE story time? And if so, if not, when will we be doing an NDE show?
Well, I'll do lots of open lines, so don't worry about that.
Excellent. Now for the real question.
Yes.
Does Joe think that soul travel in any way relates to remote viewing, like Albert Taylor's experiences?
Oh, geez. I don't know if he considers it soul travel, but that's a hell of a question.
What you're asking is really about 2 different things, and they're very specific. They're very different. I came to the Monroe Institute and spent 14 months with Bob Monroe while he taught me how to control my out of bodies. For obvious reasons, I was then used to access different things with the out of body state as well as using remote viewing. They're really different in that remote viewing is a mental state where you're actually sitting at a table and talking to a monitor, and you can actually discuss the target, and you know you're in the room talking about a target somewhere else. The out of body state is you leave your body and you actually go to the target, and all of the senses that you have access to include the psychic sense, is available in the out of body state. So in some respects, the remote viewing is really, really easy in comparison. While out of body, however, the detail that you can obtain is incredibly advanced. In other words, you can actually walk up to a device or an object sitting on a table and push your face down inside it and then recreate it to scale. And know inherently what it does. The difficulty comes in the differences when someone might ask you while you're in the out-of-body state to tell them where something is made. If it doesn't have a label on it that says made in Mexico or something, then it will be impossible to tell in many cases. Where in the remote viewing sense, if you just start describing something on a table and your monitor says, do you have any idea where that's made? You immediately jump to the country or the place in which it was made, and you can give a pretty detailed description of the factory and how it was made. So everything in the remote viewing sense is sort of tied together, item to item, where in the out-of-body state, you're pretty much fixed in space-time in the place that you have settled, and you're using your out-of-body state in. It's also a very difficult state to maintain, especially if you have to focus on something. I don't know if that answers much of the question, but
that definitely did. And I could just listen to you talk about the Monroe Institute. This is all the show.
Yes.
it's a great place. I recommend it to anybody.
All right.
Appreciate it, guys. Great show.
Thank you, caller. Is it fair, Joe, to call it soul travel? In other words, do you believe that well, you obviously do, that we have an immortal soul. Is that what's traveling, Joe?
Well, I would think of the immortal soul as being consciousness. I think that consciousness exists within everything, right on down to the subquantum level. And in fact, we wrote a paper, I and Professor Emeritus at Texas A&M by the name of Ron Bryant. Brian wrote a paper together proposing an experiment to show or demonstrate that consciousness exists at the subquantum level. And if it does, then that would change the whole perspective on how reality works.
Okay, very quickly, Nogales, Arizona, I think you're on with Joe.
Okay, right now?
Yes, right now.
Oh, okay. My name is Julia, and first I'd like to thank you so very much for coming back on the air.
Thank you.
You, throughout my lifetime, have just expanded my mind. As have you, Mr. McMonagle. I spoke to you about 10 years ago at a Gateway program. And and it's good. It's really good that you're still out there as well. All right, so I have a three-part question, and then I guess I'll take my answer off the air. First off, it has to do with like the limits of remote viewing. I think limits are important so that when we know what they are, we can transcend them and go beyond boundaries. So in the first one, there was a remote viewer on the unit named David Morehouse, and he said that there was somebody that had developed a system that was an alarm system for remote viewers.
Okay, real quick, we're up on a break here. What's number 3?
Okay, number 3. Number 3 has to do with remote influencing. What is the jump from remote viewing to remote influencing?
All right. Well, you're certainly right on target. We've got to take the break right now, so hold tight, Joe, and we'll come right back to those 3 questions from the high desert. I'm Art Bell. This
It's not radio, but it is what's next. To cast your ray of light into the darkness, please call 1-952. Call Art. That's 1-952-225-5278.
And if you've got Skype, you're welcome. In North America, it's MITD 51. Outside North America, MITD 55. Remote viewer Joe McMonagle is our guest, probably the world's best remote viewer, and an interesting time for you to be able to ask a question. Let's see where in the world to go. Let's try a anonymous line here very quickly. You're on the air with Joe. Hi.
Hello. test to see this one thing, and it turned out it was some sort of giant orb.
Oh, you're losing me a little now. You're saying they were trying to remote view some giant orb?
Yes, it was. They didn't tell the class what it was. And the whole class of remote viewers, we saw this giant orb, and it was some sort of giant alien consciousness.
Okay, I appreciate the question, but I'm not sure what we do with it. Joe's already said there is alien life out there. It would be pretty unusual for a whole class of trainees to see the same thing, Joe, wouldn't it?
Yeah, if it's truly a class of remote viewers. In many cases, some of the classes that are being taught, the viewers are not being kept totally ignorant of the target. In other words, the person teaching has access to the target and knows what the target is. And I hate to be a despoiler, but one of the problems is that human beings, 70% of our communications takes place non-verbally. So anybody in the room that knows what the target is communicating that information. They may not realize it, but they are in a lot of finite ways. And it's one of the reasons why we get a lot of commonality in viewings by groups. And group remote viewing is very hazardous for a number of reasons. One is, let's say you have 8 viewers and 7 of the viewers say A and the one viewer says B. There is just a statistical probability for viewer B to be correct as the others that are in agreement.
Interesting. All right, going back to the caller prior to the break, 3 quick answers, I hope, to 3 quick questions. Limits on remote viewing.
I don't know of any limits on remote viewing. We've tried to fix limits so that we could at least develop some kind of a defense mechanism against it, and we've never been able to fix a limit. So,
David Morehouse.
She said something about him mentioning an alarm or remote viewing alarm or something.
That's right.
I'm not familiar with anything that alarms to remote viewing. Certainly, if there was some reason that you would know that a remote viewing was taking place, that would be outstanding, like a strain gauge going off or something when a remote viewer was in the room. Right. That unfortunately just doesn't happen.
The third question was concerning remote influencing, which we have already answered, and she can review the program.
But you know, there is one part of that you have to say is influencing.
Oh?
If a viewer observes something, they're affecting it. Even though they may not be affecting it physically.
Yes, I understand.
They are still observing it. So, in a sense, that is remote influencing.
Well, all right.
So I just wanted to correct myself on that part.
All right, Renee from San Jose, you're on the air.
Thanks for taking my call, Art. How are you?
I'm fine. You sound like a million miles away, though.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm on Highway 5, but I'm driving down the road.
Oh, okay.
I have a question for your guest, Joe. Joe, you said you mentioned that you remote viewed them building the pyramids. Did you see how they moved those stones?
Okay, thank you. He's obviously in and out of cell service.
Yeah, the stones are moved by cart to a loading ramp and lowered into the boats using a crane, basically a very simple wooden crane. The stones are then trucked to the building site down the Nile and into the lake, and then lowered into the lake. The lake water is used as an engineering plane, and they actually had alloyed saws that used water as a lubricant, water and sand as a lubricant. So that's how they cut the stones.
All right, let's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The first third of the pyramid was done that way. The rest was done with smaller stones.
Okay. Red Oak, Texas. You're on with Joe. Hi.
Hi. I was going to ask, have y'all ever remote viewed a another dimension, a fourth dimension, or something like that?
Oh, that's actually a very good question.
That is a good question, because I happen to think that what we're calling interactions with ETs or extraterrestrials, I don't think are interactions with extraterrestrials. I think many of the interactions that we're having have to do with interdimensional beings. I think there is a multiverse, probability for a multiverse, and that many of the things we're calling ET effects are actually interdimensional effects. They're able to open and shut doors to another universe and affect us in that way.
All right, very quickly on Skype, you're on the air with Joe McMonagle. Hi. Hello on Skype. Going once. Going twice. Go on. Hello there. Instead, you're on the air from somewhere in California. Hello?
That's right, Art.
Yes.
Art, you rapscallion. I've been patiently waiting for your return, my friend.
Thank you.
Joe, big fan.
Yes.
I've tried some remote viewing via the course by Ed Dames, and I can say this stuff works. I'm a physicist, and this might sound a little self-serving, but I endeavor to win a Nobel Prize, and I'd like to use remote viewing to advance my understanding of some physical processes. Is this possible?
Using remote viewing, absolutely.
Yes.
We in fact, my friend Ron Bryant, he's a high energy physicist. He's a professor emeritus at Texas A&M. We did double blind targeting of subquantum particles, and the remote viewing was just as accurate as anything in the room size. And we were able to see things and describe things in the high energy ray arena that was consistent with some of the things caught by the fly array out in Arizona. So, you can use it for physics. And,
all right, that's the answer. Short on time, Colorado Springs, Colorado. Hello.
Hi there. This is Kevin from Colorado Springs. And I've had some teachers tell me that I can't be a remote viewer. Now, I've had sight. I lost my sight later in life. So I'm wondering, I know I'd have to be describing what I see to someone, but is it possible for me to do remote viewing?
Absolutely. Remote viewing is a misnomer. You actually don't see something. It's perceptions, and the perceptions are they come in many different ways. Everything from sound to taste to feelings. And what my suggestion to you would be, as a person without sight, what you want to do is get some clay, and you want to model what you perceive with your fingers. Because you're not being sighted gives you an advantage in reality, in that you're able to express yourself in extraordinary ways with touch.
That's remarkable.
And I suggest that you do that. I think you should take a remote viewing course, and you should use your fingers and model with clay. Don't try to draw something or try to describe something that a sighted person would see.
What a neat way to approach it.
Model it.
Yeah. Got it. Cam on Skype, you're on the air with Joe.
Hi. I like the modeling idea. Maybe
Me too.
mashed potatoes comes to mind. But I was curious. Recently, Courtney Brown, another remote viewer, released information about, they looked into the Phoenix Lights, and I'm just curious if you know anything about that, or ever looked into that, or followed what they looked into at all?
Sure.
No, I haven't looked at the Phoenix Lights. I actually do very little targeting on, what you could perceive as ETs or extraterrestrial or UFOs or things like that. The reason why is because one of my demands is, if somebody brings me a target like that, I want them to almost guarantee that it is one of those peculiar sightings that fits the genre. If you look at
got one quick one from the wormhole. That's what gives me messages. Jesus, have you remote viewed the concept of the things that occurred, the miracles that we've been told about with respect to Jesus and his time?
Yeah, I have, but not the miracles. I had an experience when I was in the lab at the Monroe Institute with Robert Monroe, and he had me strung out pretty well on his equipment using the signals.
Right.
And I had a perception that I was in the presence of a column of light, and he asked me to put my hand in it, which I did, and I was overwhelmed with the sense that, that this is what the all-consuming love of Christ was. And it was a very overwhelming experience. I have no idea why I had it, other than it reinforced some things in my knowledge base, I guess. And it energized me to a certain extent. But that actually happened in the lab. But other than that, no, I've not been formally targeted on any of the miracles specifically.
All right.
That would be an interesting target, sir.
Sure would. All right, Debbie, you're on with Joe. Hi. Debbie,
can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Okay, good evening, you guys. Hey, I've got a question, Joe. I'm wondering, at the beginning of the program, Art ran a commercial on capital, and it got me thinking about the dollar. And I'm wondering, have you remote viewed, the dollar, where our American dollar is going, as the reserve currency of the world? Have you looked at that? And if so, what did you see?
Well, there's been some major moves to unseat the dollar as the world currency. And the problem they run into is that there are no other nations that value their currency as the American dollar is valued. In other words, we have a system of valuation that seems to be rock hard, rock steady, even though we print money sometimes beyond our capacity to back.
Yes.
We still value it appropriately, even when it's drawn down in value. It's that system of valuation that's trusted, not necessarily the dollar.
Well, when times are troubled, people still run to the dollar, but that's
right.
That
because it's a secure currency, Art.
The best so far.
Yes, exactly. There just is no other value system that matches our value system, and that's why the dollar remains strong, even though it's we printed so many of them.
And if you look ahead, does it remain so?
Yes, I think it will. I think that China is coming into a crash. I think America is coming into a truly bull market. I think we're going to be seeing some incredible growth in the market area over the next 5 to 7 years.
All right, jumping to California, I think. Please turn whatever you've got off, please, or we're not going to be able to hear you.
Yep, it's off. I was disconnected before, Art.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Am I live right now?
You are.
All right, awesome. Joe, big fan. I've tried some of the remote viewing by the course, Ed Dames. I know he's not ranking high in this conversation this evening, but this stuff works. I'm a physicist, and it sounds self-serving, but I endeavor to win a Nobel Prize. And
okay, you told us all that, so go ahead.
Yeah. What I'd like to know is, can the remote viewing advance my understanding of some very technical physical processes? And if this is possible, what are your suggestions in reining in what Ed Dames refers to as that analytical overlay, that AOL, shutting off the thinking?
You're breaking up. Shutting off the thinking.
How do I shut off the AOL?
Okay. AOL. I don't know. You just hit disconnect. You're off AOL like that. I'm not exactly sure what he was talking about beyond that.
He's talking about analytic overlay. It's when your ego becomes more involved with the process than the remote viewing, and you start inserting things that you want to hear or want to see. I think it's almost an impossibility in many cases. You have to know when to let go and put it down and walk away.
Right.
And when to come back to it. And I do that quite frequently, and usually what I do is I'll carry a notebook in my shirt pocket, so when I'm cutting grass or doing some menial task somewhere, repairing a light switch or something, if I have something flash across my mind that's pertinent to the problem that I'm thinking about, I'll write it down. But if I find my thought processes getting involved, I'll usually put it down and walk away.
All right, Joe. The program is ending. I can't control it. We're out of time. I can't believe it. I could go on and on and on and on. So, do you have a website? Anything you'd like to promote? Do it.
Yeah, I really like to promote the Monroe Institute. I teach remote viewing here. It's one of the best places in the world to come learn about remote viewing, not just learning about monitoring, viewing, and analysis and that sort of thing, judging, but actually knowing when you walk away that you have actually remote viewed.
So in other words, if they're interested, Joe, they can get hold of the Monroe Institute and they can begin following up themselves.
Yes, it's monroeinstitute.org.
All right. Well, that certainly is the place. My friend, thank you so much for being here tonight. And I'm sorry we had so little time.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, it flew by.
It sure did. Thank you, my friend. Good night.
Thank you. You too.
From the high desert, the great American Southwest, to the world, good night, everybody.
Thank you, Art and guest, as we conclude the remote viewing episode of Midnight in the Desert. The Monroe Institute does still exist here in 2022, and that website still does work, monroeinstitute.org. Again, that was Monroe, M-O-N-R-O-E, Institute, I-N-S-T-I-T-U-T-E.org, if you wish to follow up on your own quest. As that, we will finish this fight out, and then we will conclude our broadcast day as well here on From Day One. Make sure you do come back tomorrow, of course, for more Court Substance, and of course a new Art Bell, since we did complete tonight's episode out with the rest. So always, please make sure to help us get us to the 50,000 views, 1,000 subscriber level, so those boxy red prizes can go out to you guys, and Google puts us on the algorithms. Coinbase, Ibotta, Game.gg, you know the drill on those. And until next time, like, share, and subscribe. Be kind to one another, and release the Krakens as we march along this overnight and every overnight here from Day One. Have a great night's sleep, everybody. We'll see you all bright and early tomorrow afternoon.